I'm Brad Whiteside with Logan Paulson. On this edition of the Booth Review, you will learn about the sacred new special pine tree in Austin Seibert's backyard.
And we talk about the dynamic duo of Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson.
And Jayden Daniels protecting the ball, no turnovers, really managing the game well.
And we talk, you saw, we saw, seesaw?
On this edition of the Booth Review. Welcome into the first victory edition of the Booth Review podcast. I'm Bram Whiteside alongside Logan Paulson, who joined me up in the booth yesterday for the first time. Unfortunately, London Fletcher has a personal matter that he was dealing with. Hopefully he'll be back with us soon. It was great having you in the booth yesterday and get our first win of the season.
Yeah, it was great being up there, man. You guys do such a great job, and it's kind of a bummer Fletcher wasn't there because I learned something every time he talks. But, good first opportunity for me, and obviously easy to call a game when it's a win, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We got the weirdest game ever, too.
Yeah.
One team scores 3 touchdowns. The other kicks 7 field goals. The team with the 7 field goals wins because the other team didn't have their kicker to kick field goals when they needed it most at the end of a game. It was bizarre, really.
It was bizarre, but, you see stuff like that happen. You've called enough games. And
do you? Because since World War II, Washington's won 5 games without scoring a touchdown.
But I'm saying you've seen teams that have lost their kicker in a game, right, and had to kind of go like, oh, here's the safety, the third-string safety, let's get him in there. You know what I'm saying? And so, obviously, this is some adversity that the Giants didn't manage very well. Apparently, he pulled his groin earlier in the week, and they didn't bring in a backup kicker. Like, that's a way you could have mitigated some of that. So that's a decision that they made schematically from an X's and O's standpoint that I don't love for the Giants, but I love for us, obviously.
Yeah.
And again, like it's like you said, kicked a lot of field goals, but it's one of those things that's like you find a way to win, man. Like, what did Dan Quinn say in the post game when we talked to him? He was like, "It's this is like kind of how the division is, and you just got to find a way to get the dub, and it's hard to win." So.
You lived this. I think we said this to Dan Quinn too when he came down. Nothing's easy in this league.
No,
it really isn't. And I know people like, oh, the Giants lost to the Vikings at home, and it was terrible, and Daniel Jones looks bad, and I don't care. Yeah. Like, none of these games are easy. They never are.
Well, that's the thing is, like, everyone was like, when you're doing your pregame show, I'm sure you did a ton of pregame shows too. Like, the Giants are terrible. The fans all think that, but like, that's an NFL team. That's an NFL team with NFL players, and those are NFL coaches. And I love the adjust. We'll talk about this more as we go, but I love some of the adjustments that Brian Daboll made from week 1 to kind of account for some of the deficiencies that they had. And that's the thing is, every week you're going to get a better version of the team you played before the week than you saw in film.
It's so funny you bring up like pregame. Like, we go through all these notes and, like, we think this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And then Graham Gano pulls his groin, on an opening kickoff that was called back that could have been a touchdown. And all of a sudden, we're sitting there going, this is going to affect the rest of the game. Once we saw Jamie Gillen not being able to kick an extra point and they're stuck, we knew the rest of the game was about 2-point conversions. They can't kick a field goal if they want to. At the end of the game, they could have easily been up. They were in field goal range before the 4th and 4 play. They could have easily been up 21-18 at that point. 100%. Easily.
Yeah, no, and I think, again, those are the decisions that were made on Tuesday of the week for the Giants that affected the game on Sunday. But, yeah, and kudos to our defense. Obviously, those are some tough, I think there's something as an offensive player that's very liberating about knowing you have to go for it. There's something liberating as a play caller because you can kind of stay ahead of the schedule, and they were able to get off the field in some of those situations, stop a couple 2-point conversions. So even though, like we were helped by the injury, you still got to make the plays when you got to make them. So I think there's some positive stuff there.
You're in the locker room, and after the game, a win's a win's a win. Like, do you think about, like, boy, we got lucky today with this particular break or that particular break?
Yeah, obviously you think about that sometimes, but like I think, like you said, a win's a win, and we got to get them however we get them. You know what I mean? Like, there was that, I forget, we played Minnesota in 2011, and the starting quarterback goes out, and the starting running back, Adrian Peterson, goes out with an ACL. Yeah. And so then it's Toby Gerhart and, Marcus Webb playing quarterback, and they win the game. So it's like you can still lose those opportunities. You got to find a way to get it done. So, again, like, fans can say whatever they want, man. Like, get the first win at home.
Yeah.
I thought they showed resiliency. Like, how many times have we seen this team over the course of however long I've been covering the team, you've been a fan for forever, lose games like this.
That's right. To the Giants, frankly.
Right. And so they stuck with it. They didn't lose their cool. They took the points when they got them. And again, would you like them to score in the red zone? 1,000%. I'm not saying that's not an issue, but I'm saying, like, you got to win this. When it's served up on a silver platter, you got to find a way to win the game.
It's been really bizarre results against the Giants, too. They had a tie a couple of years ago. They had the night game where Terry got called for some ridiculous penalty when he had asked the referee, am I onside? Got called anyway. They moved it back. And then the very next play, should have been a call in the end zone. And Curtis Samuel got mugged in the end zone. They didn't call that. There was the one that Washington won where Dustin Hopkins missed a field goal, and there was some kind of phantomish call on Dexter Lawrence on the field goal, gave him a second chance, and they won. So this is actually right in line with this series. It's been really weird, especially in recent years.
It has been weird, and again, I just go back, like, you gotta win these games. Like, I don't care who it is, who's out there, who's playing, like, win the game. Because ultimately, no one cares about, like, you remember, obviously, because you're the voice of the Washington Commanders, you're in the booth, and you remember all these, like, little foibles, but most fans don't. They're like, oh, we lost to the Giants, or we beat the Giants. Like, win the game.
In a couple of weeks, when they have played Cincinnati and Arizona, no one's going to remember how they did this.
Right.
Only I will. And talk like
and
nobody will. People
right.
will look at the record at the end of the year. In the end, people look at the record. They don't remember all these little parts and why they got to that point. And that's what matters here. And I agree. They won a division game. They won their home opener. It's a big deal. It really doesn't matter how they got to it. Even as strange as maybe the path to it was, but it's only strange today. In 2 weeks, no one's going to remember. They're just going to remember they beat the Giants.
Yeah, and I also think it's just like it serves something for the confidence of the team. You know, like to get the first win on the score sheet and say, man, we did some really good stuff offensively, and you know, even though we struggled with some stuff defensively, we were able to make plays when we had to make them. And I think it just builds confidence. And as much as it's not, you know, the NFL is this kind of you know, it's this super professional environment. Like there's something to momentum and building the confidence of a group. And I think this, again, while it's a weird win, the situation's unusual. I think it can lead to more winning. It can lead to saying, hey, we're going to Cincinnati. Maybe we can figure something out against a team that's playing pretty good football. I
don't want to focus too much on the kicker, but obviously he had a great day for them. 7 for 7.
We should focus on him, though, man, right?
We said to him, he's been here a week. Yeah. This is a 90-plus-year-old franchise. He broke a franchise record after being here a week by kicking more field goals in any game ever that they've played. And I do feel good for the coaching staff because this is the 5th kicker they've signed since the offseason. And through the summer, they just couldn't find somebody that was consistent for them. It happened in week 1 with Cade York. It was happening during the summer with Riley Patterson. So I'm sure that they were nervous throwing a guy out there because that's been one of those things that hadn't been settled. It was nice to see it happen for them and obviously for him because he's a journeyman running around trying to find a job. No better way to make an impression than to do what he did on Sunday. Yeah,
and I think the other thing is that he still might not, he's only been here a week, he still might not be the right fit long term. You know, like maybe his leg's not strong enough or whatever, but it's great that he comes in.
He's trying to enjoy today, by the way.
But that's what I'm saying, though. I think fans look at it and they say, oh, you know, he's the guy, he's the answer. But, you know, there's a reason he's kicked around. Like maybe he's not good at kickoffs or maybe they want to go a different direction. But it's great that a guy who's been on multiple teams comes in, sees the opportunity, and makes 7 field goals and breaks a franchise record. Like, kudos to you, right? Yeah. Kudos that you found that opportunity. And again, hopefully it works out and he's here for the rest of the season, here for a long time and getting those NFL paychecks, which would be great. But I also think there's something to be said that this guy who's, again, not really hung on for a long time in one spot made it work for the Commanders.
It's actually, you've seen this a lot of guys that it takes a while for them to, and I think it goes back to this trust part that you talk about where coaches want to have people that they trust on their team. And I think, especially in a kicker, they get second chances or they stick around with places because the coaches feel comfortable that they're going to make the kicks. And to your point, he's only been here a week. I remember it was interesting back because he was in the kicking competition with the Jets.
Right.
And we were up there, obviously, for the joint practice and then the first preseason game. And it's him and Greg Zuerlein. And you have a pretty good guess at who's going to win that job. Zuerlein's been around forever. And I remember sitting there at the time going, I'm not sure our kicker's on our roster.
I remember you said that.
Yes, I said, I'm not sure our kicker's on our roster. We're playing 2 teams in the preseason that have a kicking competition. One of them's going to get cut, and it could be Seibert or Zuerlein, or in the case of New England, Joey Sly or Chad Ryland. One of them's going to be available, and I think it's ironic that it was the Jets kicker who ended up being here.
It is ironic, and I think you give yourself a pat on the back there for that tremendous foresight. Because I don't think about kickers the way you think about kickers.
I get a few things right. You don't think I get a lot right, but I get a few things right. You should have heard before we started taping how much you think I'm wrong about everything, which is fine. One more thing on Austin Seibert. I loved his line after the game reset because someone said, like, how do you practice? How do you stay into it? And he said he goes in his backyard with his family and he kicks the ball at a pine tree. That's how he doesn't have goalposts. He doesn't go to a field. He kicks at the pine tree. So when he walks on the field, he just tells himself, just kick the ball at the pine tree that doesn't exist in the stadium.
That is... it's either really cool, like it's a really skin narrow, like skinny pine tree, and it's a really hard thing, or it's a massive pine tree that he's just blasting footballs at. We should ask him, see if he's got a picture of it floating around.
Well, I think we need to, this is for the production staff here at the Commanders. I think we need to see this pine tree now. There's a shoot that's happening with this pine tree.
Not a bad idea for sure. But yeah.
He's probably like, I don't live anywhere near here, so you're going to have to go find the pine tree.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, because if he's in Ashburn just blasting balls at a pine tree, that'd be pretty cool. Or his neighbor's going to be pissed at him because they're all in his backyard someplace.
Well, there's going to be some kind of sabbatical going on in this pine tree with all Commanders fans just so happy that they got this win against the Giants.
No doubt, man. I mean, it's incredible.
It's a very special pine tree now.
It's
sacred.
Yeah, seriously. But that's
sacred
cool.
Pine tree.
Awesome. Feel really good for him, man. Feel really happy for him, and happy for the team. And
yes.
However you do it, the pine tree, whatever. Also, I really
agree. When I hear people complain about the wins, I'm like, you don't know how hard this is. You're out of your minds.
Also, the other thing I thought was cool was him talking about Tress and the holding and the long snapper. I thought all that stuff was really cool because it's again it's such a new thing. Like you said, for a week, and for that all to kind of work out the way it did, hit 7 in a row. That stuff's sled.
Yes, he's turned Tressway into a holding savant.
I know that's what he
was
said.
kind of described him as.
Say that, yeah.
So he's the shaman at the pine tree. Is Tressway with the sacred pine tree?
Yeah, when I was here with Tress was a guy that was never bad at anything. We do ping pong, he's amazing. You do foosball, he's amazing. You do the little shoot basketball thing, he's amazing. So it falls in line with just general excellence from Tress.
Yeah. Obviously, one of the big deals, and if we are going to nitpick something on a win, they did get into the red zone multiple times. They could not score a touchdown. It was unusual that they would get that far. There were a lot of different reasons. I think penalties derailed a few of the drives, and then there were some executions. Just in general, would you think of being in the red zone 8 million times and ending up with a field goal every time?
Yeah, I thought that was totally fine. No, I'm kidding. It was. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think when they moved the ball really well, and I think you saw some really innovative, dynamic things from Cliff. I think you saw a much better executed game from Jayden Daniels, so lots of positive things to take away. But then obviously when they got down the red zone, when we were calling the game, it's you could almost set your watch by it. Oh, they're inside the 15. Here comes a procedural penalty. Here comes someone jumping off sides. And you just can't exist well in a third and long situation, in any facet of the field, but specifically in the red zone. It just doesn't. It's not a tenable thing. So when you take that penalty early in the downs, you're going to have a really hard time being successful, or you're taking a sack. You just cannot have negative plays. Again, at any level of the field, you can't have negative plays, but it's compounded when you're in these situation-specific areas like the red zone. So I look at that and I say, you don't have to look very far. The question becomes now for the coaching staff is how you clean that stuff up. Are we being too complicated with the play call in the red zone? Are we not getting the play call in quickly? Are we calling plays that Jayden feels comfortable with? Or, two of the sacks I watched, because I just watched the first half right before I came over here, they're coming on RPOs. And so he's pulling the ball, he's holding on to the football, not delivering where he needs to. And again, why didn't you like that? Oh, it's because the safety's here, whatever. We're trying to preserve points. Is that just an experience thing? So those are all questions that need to be answered for sure. But again, a lot of positives, but I think that area specifically just got to clean it up a little bit.
And on the penalties, it was 3 different players that got them over the course of the 3 different drives that ended up in field goals that end up in that way. And it was very different scenarios by which each one of them occurred. So it wasn't even some singular thing that was off here. These were actually very different plays and very different scenarios where they ended up with a similar outcome in penalties.
And I'd have to go back and watch it, but I think watch it more specifically for this point. But I think the common thread was that they were trying to do a little bit of pre-snap gymnastics, right? And so they're trying to shift the tight end to the other side, then they're trying to bring a motion, they're trying to shift from wildcat, then bring a motion. And when there's multiple, hey, let's go, those types of communications in the backfield from the quarterback, having been in a 3-point stance in the low red, it's at the end of the bowl, it gets a little bit louder there, even at home, Mm-hmm. You're like, did I hear Sit Hut? Where am I? Is that the cadence? What's going on? And so I do think that there is some stuff there that needs to be cleaned up just in terms of communication. Again, I think that's encouraging because those are easy fixes, right? You just spend a little more time on task. We say, oh, let's not use, hey, let's move on this. Let's use a different kind of word so it's distinct from the cadence.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we're up in the cadence, up in the offensive line when we start the cadence so they hear it. All those types of things I think are extremely important. But again, just little details that need to be fixed. So hopefully, and again, I think the other thing that I'm really encouraged by, this is a little bit of a tangent, is the improvement from last week to this week was significant offensively.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
And so I think that I trust Cliff and this offensive staff to say, hey, these are the issues we had in the red zone, which we just kind of identified a couple of them potentially. We can get them corrected for next week.
Yeah, just to button up the red zone thing. So, and to the point of short memories, Washington was 3 for 3 in the red zone the week before.
Yeah, right.
People don't remember that
Right.
part. They're 0 for whatever it was, 5 or 6. I don't remember what the end number was in this one. But one of them also was they settled for a field goal to win the game.
Yeah.
So like that, I don't even look at it that way. They weren't trying to score a touchdown with the time running down. They were setting themselves up to win the game. So of like the 5 times they were there where they were actually trying to score a touchdown, 0 for 5, people think they had red zone struggles. A week ago they didn't.
Right.
So they like to the point of short memories, I think people forget this part week to week.
And again, this is a little bit, but in my experience, anytime I was with a team that was installing a new offense, so with Kyle, when Sean was the OC, when I went to Chicago, they had a new offensive coordinator with Kyle again in San Fran. The red zone stuff, and again, when I was in Atlanta with, what's his name? I forget his first name, but new offenses, red zone becomes really, really hard because the timing becomes so important. So with young kind of fledgling offenses, it makes sense to me that you're going to have some issues there. I remember with Kyle in 2010, we were top 5 in yards, we were top 5 in first downs, but we were like last in scoring because our red zone efficiency was so bad. And no one could say that was a bad offense, but we just couldn't score points because, again, that's where the motion timing, the communication, the rub, the position of the receiver in the end zone, the position of the sit in relation to that guy is just magnified that much more because the spacing's different. So I think that's something that'll get better as the season goes on, and I think hopefully it will be accelerated because the coaches are awesome here.
I want to go back to what you were talking about, the improvement, which I saw too, and I really want to lean in on you and what you saw out there. But I do want to reiterate this point, and I think it gets lost in everybody's reaction to everything, which is every single person that was playing yesterday was doing their second game together ever.
Right.
And one of those people was a rookie quarterback.
Right.
And this offensive coordinator, who I know has a long run as a head coach in the NFL, was in college last year and came back and is installing this new offense. Like, everybody needs to understand that it's baked in that there's going to be ups and downs, and I don't really totally get what the overreaction to any of it is, because largely, and I'm not just saying this because we're sitting here, I think largely, if you're not happy with what you've seen in the first couple of weeks with the offense, I don't know what you're watching, honestly.
And again, I think people, this has been my experience, is people who have criticisms of the Washington Commanders, specifically in this setting, they're not watching a lot of other football around the NFL. Because a lot of the issues that this team's experiencing, other teams are experiencing, right? I think the Indianapolis Colts are a great example, right? Obviously, Anthony Richardson, is that his first name? Yeah, obviously very dynamic, explosive down the field, but down-to-down consistency is lacking. Right? So you're going to see some offensive inefficiencies with a young player, right?
Go watch Caleb Williams. The first 2 weeks of his career, I don't believe, is like any indictment of what his career is going to be. But you're not going to like what you see from a completion percentage, from some of the decision-making, the sacks that he's taking on these plays. You wouldn't like that if you saw that.
It's different. It's a different game. And so I do think that when I look at Jayden Daniels specifically, compared to, Anthony Richardson, who's the youngest player in the NFL, Caleb Williams, and, don't get me started on Bo Nix. Like, holy cow, that guy's having a rough outing here over his first 2 games, is I see a poise and I see a professionalism, and the moment's not too big for him, right? And the other thing is the improvement from last week to this week. So last week, we did a breakdown on our show, the Command Center show, with the film, and we talked through, he scrambled a bunch. And there were times where I thought he could have thrown the ball. And I think when you talk to the coach, you're like, oh, he missed some opportunities. And this week I felt like he was a little bit more patient in the pocket, a little bit more patient on his reads, and he was really being more aggressive, putting the football in a position where the receiver could make a play. Now, was it perfect? No, not by a mile. But was it better? Significantly. And so I think here's a guy that is renowned for his work ethic and his professionalism, and I expect that kind of improvement every single week. And if we can get that, man, he's going to be a heck of a football player. And for a franchise that has had a hard time finding a quarterback, to me, you couldn't ask for anything more. A guy that physically has the tools, seems to have the composure and the work ethic to get better. Irrespective of how effective the offense has been, the fact that he's shown those flashes, to me, it's like this season, no matter what happens, is going to be a win if that trajectory continues to improve. Now, it's not going to be a linear progression, right?
Of course not.
There's going to be dips and valleys and peaks, like with anything. But as long as it's generally trending in the right direction, I mean, holy cow! I mean, Bram, you've been a fan like probably longer than I've been alive. But like, no, that's not a dig. I didn't mean that in a bad way. But how great?
I wear my age, Logan. It's fine.
How great would that be, though? You know what I mean? If this is the guy.
Like this is why I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because I've seen this a lot.
Right? Yeah.
Years.
So, and again,
with
I think
specific cases.
But I think it's good. It's good to be tempered, right? It's good to be tempered, but at least he's answered the offseason stuff has been good. The first couple games have been good, and he just seems to have the right process. And so I'm optimistic, right? At least you could say that probably.
This is the first time that they've drafted somebody in the course of my lifetime, watching, covering, being around, watching every snap that this team is, hiked.
How long have you been a fan? How long have you been a fan?
I mean, I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I went to RFK Stadium as a child. So I had tickets in the 1980s as a kid, going to all their games. It was religion. It's religion to me.
And,
I know.
And you have like a photographic memory because you remember plays.
I mean,
you bring up plays and I'm like, what?
I know. But you know what? Like, I wear the nerddom. They're religion and family to me, really, is what this team has been to me my whole life. But we have not had a franchise quarterback in forever. And we've had good examples of ones. Like, I'll go back to, in my lifetime, Joe Theismann was that, really. And unfortunately, his career was cut short because of an injury that occurred to him. In the interim, they were able to win without having, quote unquote, franchise quarterbacks. Like, people forget, Doug Williams, they almost traded him the year before the Super Bowl. He shared time with Jay Schrader in the season that they won the Super Bowl, and then he ended up having this magical run and an MVP Super Bowl victory. Mark Rippon was on an incredible team. I liken this to Brock Purdy with the 49ers, where you watch, they were outrageously incredible. Maybe the best team ever in 1991. They had more sacks than anybody and gave up fewer sacks than anybody. It was a crazy, crazy season that they had. But in the interim of all that, we've had these moments where they acquired Brad Johnson. That was a mistake to let him go prematurely than what they did. The hope of Jason Campbell, or specifically RG3, and I think RG3 falls in this category because of his abilities, that the high ceiling of what he may be able to do. And so I think, and then he came out of the gate, not unlike Jayden, it was like, whoa, it was so good so fast that everybody thought, this is it, we're finally there, and we all know the story that went from there. But even when Dwayne was drafted, everyone paused and said, we think he needs time. He'll be good. Even the coaching staff was saying, give us some time with him. That's what's different about this. I think we see what the high level capacity is. His athleticism's off the charts. Like, that's obvious. The work ethic was something we were told about. We're seeing in practice. I think you're seeing more because you're inside the building more than I am, but I think you're seeing that literally in practice. Cool, calm, collected. And I've been saying this for months, and this is why I didn't want to get ahead of myself. I have not seen this guy look like a rookie yet. Yeah. There is not a day that I've gone out to practice and I went, oh, well, that's not going to go well if they actually do that in a game. And the fast learning part of it is the other thing. Like, in week 1, there was literally no intermediate passing game. And I think some of that had to do with he was just vacating pockets immediately and making these choices. Instinctually, I liked what he was doing. But obviously, you're not going to win like that long term, so things are going to change. What happens a week later? Yeah. Like, the intermediate passing game is literally there. And I know it's like two different defenses and like everything's all very different, but Noah Brown, who's been here 2 weeks, is catching a key clutch moment at the end of a game over the middle of the field. Zach Ertz is being found and incorporated in the offense. They had an incredible call to Austin Eckler in the third or fourth quarter where they had the rollout throwback. All of these things are just incredible markers of this guy is ahead of the curve. He doesn't feel like a rookie. And if this is the starting point, I'm again trying to hold back the enthusiasm, but it feels like it's going in a direction that this franchise has not seen at that position in a very long time.
Yeah, that's very well said. It's and I think the other thing is you got a staff here that seemingly understands, like with Cliff, like for all of kind of the criticism about the simplicity of the offense, like I think you see a guy who understands how to insulate a quarterback, which is something that we were very critical of EB last year, right? And this is a guy who understands how to like get him confident, bring him along, which I love. I love to see that. Love to see that kind of play calling, and I love to see how selective he is about when to call shots down the field, how the protections are. Like, he's done a lot of really cool stuff over the first couple of weeks. And so supplement that with Jayden's own development, with what Dan's done and how they've talked about him, how they brought him along.
Yes.
It just seems like everybody's on this guy's team, and he's and he's warranted that, which is cool. So again, like, back to the game, like, again, the improvement, all those things, very positive and very encouraged by the whole thing.
All right, so let's just talk about his play a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, he is vacating out of the pocket, right? Some of it is under pressure.
yeah.
I think it was it felt accelerated to me in the first game against Tampa Bay, that there were a couple where you went, I got to go. And maybe and you look back and you go, had you just hung in there just a little bit longer, maybe there's a play to be made. Still, at the same time, instinctually, I love what happens. He never puts the ball in harm's way. They don't have a turnover. They've only almost had one when he fumbled the ball against Tampa. There was never a point in time in this Giants game where I felt like the ball was put in danger ever by him. So I love all of that. But at the same time, what do you think about what you've seen the first 2 weeks, and maybe specifically against the Giants, where he is running, I think, a little bit more than they anticipate? How do you feel like he's working inside the pocket and in the passing game?
I think there's the one play I was thinking of, I think it was his first scramble on the first drive. It was a 3rd and 10 maybe. And Cliff calls this play action, not a play action shot, but a drop back shot. And it actually sets up really nice. It's quarters coverage. They got Zach running like a deep sit across the formation and a post behind it. And just by some miracle, the front side safety looks like he's going to match Zach, bails out last second, and the concept's dead. Like, it looks like it's going to be great, but it's dead. And so Dexter Lawrence, being Dexter Lawrence, is getting a great pressure. Allegretti's, fighting his tail off, getting in the way. And, with any other quarterback, we're in a lot of trouble offensively. But for him to kind of step up in the pocket, see the grass, able to run and get you to a 4th and 1 where we're able to convert because of his running ability on the next play, I think it just raises the floor of the offense tremendously. And analytics people talk about this all the time with the ability of a running quarterback to elevate an offense. The problem with a running quarterback is they tend to put the ball in harm's way, and they are not very fastidious just carrying the football. He's not done that, like you just alluded to, right? So for you to steal consistently 3rd and longs, 2nd and longs, 4th and shorts, because of his ability to run the football, like, you're just in such a better spot. So again, like, week 1, I thought he was very accelerated through that process. Very, very accelerated.
In the first half, for sure.
In the first half. Week 2, I thought I thought he was much more selective and much more deliberate. Obviously, he takes 2 sacks off of like RPOs, which, again, if you pull it, you don't like it, ball still got to come out. Throw it away. That's something that comes with learning, obviously. But I think generally you saw a much better version of the player we saw week 1, and I thought you saw someone who was more consistent playing the quarterback position.
It's all under control.
Yeah.
This is what I like about this. Like, we just haven't seen him do, and he will, because everybody makes a bad play. He will. We just haven't seen him do it yet.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just think about what's happened in the first couple of weeks. Will Levis is in his 2nd year. I liked him at Kentucky. I'm like, hey, let's give him a shot. Let's see what happens here. He had a preposterously terrible play in week 1 against Chicago that really ruined their chance to win by just flipping a ball out because a play broke down on him and it goes pick 6 the other way.
Too, right?
He had a bad one this week too. Go watch Caleb Williams last night, and he's only in his 2nd game too, and he's running around like Mahomes, and he throws a ball that maybe in college gets there, but not in the NFL. Right. He threw it into danger. There's 3 Texans standing around it. They intercept it. They've lost. They could be easily 0-2 if it wasn't their defense and special teams in week 1. We haven't seen Jayden do anything like this yet. That, like, the decision making, we can nitpick some of it and say it could be better here or you could do this there. But instinctually, when Dan Quinn said he's playing the position well, I couldn't agree more, especially in light of he's only played 2 NFL games. And I feel confident with the ball in his hands that he's not going to do things to hurt the team. And it's rare to say that about somebody at his age and experience level.
Yeah, 100%. But again, I go back to Cliff and how he called the game. And I think the other thing we got to just call attention to with a young quarterback, because everyone talks about how do you insulate a young quarterback. It's like running the ball. You know what I mean? And I think when you look at, again, the stuff that Jayden did well, which is being selective about when to run the football, but also the support he got from the running backs. I mean, I don't know what B-Rob's stat line ended up being, but it was over 100 yards. Right?
17 for 133.
133, crazy efficient. Austin Eckler, oh my goodness, man. How healthy does he look? And so having that ability with the backs to stay on schedule, is incredibly important. And we talked about in the booth, finding explosive plays. Shoot, it's easy as a play caller. You have an explosive run from B-Rob. You have an explosive reception from Austin Eckler. You have a 15-yard game from Austin Eckler. You find them with the backs. And again, Cliff's doing a good job formationally and finding those opportunities. But I'm like, this is how you want to call a game for Jayden. Is, again, we talked about how well he's done and how he's handled it, but also you just de-leverage him. Like, you say, hey, we're not going to ask you to throw the ball 50 times in this game.
Right.
And when we do them, just make sure you make a good decision. And again, like, I forget who it was. We were talking. There was some kind of offensive. I think it was Sean McVay about running the football and EPA and how you value EPA. And he's like, EPA is one thing, and it's important to look at, but the thing that I like about running the football is it is a mental down off for the quarterback. And when you have two guys like Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson, it lets you feel comfortable about giving him the down off.
Yeah. Let's go to the run offense then for a minute here. So the second Quinn and Joe Witt and those guys showed up and they started talking about what's important to them and physical play. You're going to feel us. You're going to like how we get down. All these kind of the things that we've heard about what they're talking about. I looked at him and I go, if you give the ball to number 8, you're going to like what you get out of it. I've been waiting for this for a year and a half since he got healed.
We all have, right? I mean, holy cow.
Like, I've been waiting for someone. Last year, they decided not to do this. And I don't want to go back through what last year was because
you don't?
No, because I'm not a coach or an offensive coordinator, but that didn't feel like it was the right way to go.
Yeah.
No, this year, with the profile of the team that they have, them leaning on the run consistently through the year feels like something that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I look at Robinson and I go, and I don't want to go through a whole soliloquy of Redskins history or Commanders history again, but he fits the profile.
It's pretty cool when you do that, though. Like, your ability to recall like that is awesome.
So I'll do it real quick. You know what he really reminds me of?
Who?
Like Stephen Davis.
Oh, yeah.
George Rogers.
Okay.
Gerald Riggs. These very tough running backs that when the second half rolls around, the defense wants nothing to do with this person. And you could see it on his face that he wants this.
Right.
Like, he even said it in the post-game press conference. He goes, I haven't had 17 carries in a long time. I want that.
Right.
He is someone that I think if there is a model of success for this offense, and I agree, as we bring Jayden along and he becomes a more developed overall quarterback, especially in the passing game, leaning on Robinson, especially in close games, feels like a game plan that works. He is tough. He's physical. He keeps getting better and better, and I've been waiting for feeding number 8 the ball for over a year now.
Yeah, no, I'm with that 100%. I think the other thing about him is he's a better athlete than people think. So, like, when he's running through the hole, he can create through physicality and also through a little bit of footwork and craftiness. There's a couple where it's a little bit muddy. He's able to kind of get through a couple arm tackles and burst for a big gain. So I love that he can kind of first off, kudos to the offensive line. I thought they did a really good job. Kudos to the run game plan. I thought the runs that they had in the game plan were excellent to kind of maximize both him and Austin Eckler. Yeah. But again, you have two guys in Austin Eckler and B-Rob, like you're saying, who can maximize those runs, and that's really the ultimate goal, right? And again, you got to give credit to Jayden Daniels because we just talked about his ability to scramble to get first downs. You can run the ball more when you're getting first downs. So I think that's kind of chicken and the egg there. But I think, to your point, the more touches you give B-Rob, especially with a well thought out, well organized rushing attack, schematically what you're getting at there, you're going to maximize the whole offense, and you're going to deleverage Jayden Daniels. So I think those guys are awesome. I think they work really well together. Because they kind of bring a different cadence, kind of like a pitcher. You know what I'm saying? You got B-Rob, who's going to be your, fastball right down the middle. Like, that's kind of the pitch you're going to ride. But then being able to throw Austin Eckler in there, his shiftiness, his change of direction. And just, I've been super impressed watching him, watching the game yesterday, how explosive he is. And just how that is a different variable for defenses to have to account for.
It's hard to know. And obviously, we're not covering the Chargers constantly. But like last year, he got hurt early in the season, and it really changed his entire season. Okay. I think it was either groin or ankle or something like that.
Sprain,
yeah, and it changed his entire season. And so when the offseason rolled around and they're making all their changes out there, all of a sudden, all you're hearing is lost a step, not the same. Is it going to be the same? And so you're taking, I don't know if risk is the right word, because if you go look at the contract that they gave him, it really wasn't. No. And they brought him in, and same thing in the summer. I'm watching this guy going, he looks every bit the guy of 2-3 years ago. They've got an incredible tandem now if they can keep them healthy.
Yeah, and again, that's the big thing. When you give backs more touches, like that's the thing you're always negotiating is health. However, I think because there's two of them, you're going to be in a good spot. You know what I mean? Because you can say, oh, here's 15 for you, here's 10 for you, as opposed to 25 to everybody. And it feels like Cliff, again, did a really good job calling the game. Like, it didn't feel like, oh, we got to go run, pass. It was like, we got enough variation in the offense. We got enough RPO. We got enough, zone read. We got enough keeper stuff that it's all kind of mixed in there as a rushing attack, and no one's going to get too many touches, which is great. And again, like to your point, it's just the physicality, I think, pays dividends, and it helps the offensive line and pass protection.
It was really funny. Like, in the preseason, you don't typically walk out, wondering about play calling. But I remember back in the first couple preseason games, specifically the Jets one, actually, I remember leaving the booth going, I actually like the way he called the game in general of they were rolling people out early in drives. He was trying to make all the quarterbacks that played really comfortable.
Yeah.
And I got this kind of like really good feeling of, even though I know that this isn't a normal game, that he's got this feel to try to make everybody comfortable. And you're seeing this early here. That Eckler, the call on the rollout to throw back to Eckler was so perfectly timed. Yeah. And it was well executed. It was really, for me, it's like, it's hard for me to ever know, because you've played, when to pull something like that out, when the timing of it is to hit, when do you think it's going to work? And that was perfection yesterday when they did it.
Yeah, I think that area of the field is kind of notorious for like your shot trick special teams play. Like some people, like right when you get across the 50, you're calling that play. I think this type of play that he called, I thought, was what made it special, right? It's, you got the jet action across, you're faking the boot. It seems like something very kind of benign and vanilla. It's a low leverage throw back to the running back. You've tested their rules kind of with the final formation. You've ended up in the movement by the quarterback. So I think it's the when to call it isn't that spectacular, because that's when people tend to call those plays. It's the execution of it and how good it looked, and the result that came out of it I thought was excellent. So, and I think people give Cliff a hard time, seemingly, but I've been very impressed with how he's called the game.
Yeah.
And to your point, how he's gotten the quarterback really comfortable, you know what I mean? And how he's made that guy feel very welcome.
All right, later I want to revisit one thing. Terry McLaurin hasn't been unlocked in this offense yet, so we'll talk about that and maybe get some thoughts on how they can maybe unlock their receiver there. But let's talk about the defense for a little bit. So this is.
Are we gonna play this game, Bram?
You want to play the game? Yeah. You want to play the game?
We saw, seesaw, baby. Let's get after it.
Fine. Logan doesn't want to talk about the defense.
No, but we can talk about it with this, because I think this is the other thing. This is why I would want to bring this up. This is why I want to play this game, is because fans come to me and they say, oh my gosh, the defense is terrible. And it's just like there's context and nuance to that, which I would like to provide. So I think addressing both takes is why I want to play the game.
Okay, so let's do it. You saw, we saw, seesaw.
Seesaw.
Put the defense in there first then.
Okay, yeah.
Let's do that here.
So what is it? You saw, Jason, you got a mic? No mic, huh, for Jason? That's a bummer. So Allen and Payne were silent, right? And I get that. And so when I see that, I think everyone says, oh my gosh, like we're terrible. We're supposed to be good up front. We paid them all this money. What I see is in the second half, I saw Joe Witt Jr. adjust to what the Giants were doing offensively. They got out of playing man-to-man coverage. And when you look at Tampa Bay, one of the reasons that John and Duran were so effective is they were able to bring all of these man pressures. Frankie Luvu up the A-gap, Bobby Wagner on the stunt, and we're able to get those guys into one-on-one matchups. When we're in our soft cover two, right, our kind of cover two quarters, we're backed up off the ball, kind of with that soft coverage contour, they're eating double teams, right? And I don't care how good you are, it's hard to eat double teams like that unless you're Dexter Lawrence or Chris Jones, right? So I think Joe Witt Jr. was able to identify a weakness in the defense, and it hurt John and Duran in terms of their production. But that's not going to be the case every week. And I think I trust Joe Witt Jr. to look at what they're doing and say, I want to be a man pressure team, but right now we don't have the cornerbacks to do that. What can we develop from a zone pressure standpoint? And can we help those guys still be productive while insulating our secondary? Now, that's going to take a lot of excellent coaching, but I don't know. You've talked to Joe Witt Jr. Like every time you talk to him, just like this guy gets it. And I fully expect him, and I know he's capable of making I'm not saying that specific transition, but a transition like that.
Okay, let me go back to what you just said then, because that was really interesting. So you think that they want to be something,
Yes.
but they might not have the personnel to actually do it, so they're kind of adjusting on the fly to that.
Definitely in this game, I mean, you saw it too, right? And like, how many times did we say, oh, they're in man coverage, and then there's an explosive play to Malik Neighbors? And again, it's not the players specifically at fault, but they were able to identify man coverage, run picks, get guys open. And again, in the secondary, they're just having a hard time matching concepts like that right now. So let's alleviate some of that pressure. Let's get into some different stuff. And they did. And it was effective because it slowed the offense down. So how cool is that? How many times have we talked about, oh, you know, coordinator X didn't make this adjustment. And here, live and in living color, we see a coordinator make an adjustment. And does it hurt some of the players in the team? Yeah, but it lets them win the football game, which I think is excellent coaching.
Okay, then let's go back to the middle of the line again, right?
Sorry, we went on like a little odyssey there, just around.
Right, no, good.
Yeah.
Allen and Payne are not both seeing double teams all the time. That would be pretty much impossible for that to be the case.
Surprisingly, in this game, it was kind of true because basically what they came out, and if I'm the Giants, I'm looking at like, where is the money invested? Where's the strength of this team? It's on the interior offensive line. And so what they do, we talked about this in the booth. That's why this is so fun. We get to review all this stuff. But they basically came out with that wing set, the Y and the F tight end there. And when you add that to a 4-man front, you get double teams literally across the board except for one player, and they have Andrew Thomas. So every other person in the front is getting double teamed if you're not bringing a pressure. So why do you think they ran that personnel grouping probably 10 times, 12 times in that game? It's because we can get double teams in the run, we can get double teams in the pass game, and they're going to be good double teams because we're going to be soft in coverage. Again, how many times in the first half did we see Daniel Jones versus two shell check to a run, and they just would run duo right up the middle of the field? When you run two shell in the NFL, you will get that response, and I don't care how good you are up front, it's hard to stop the run when we have 7 blockers and there's only 7 defenders because there's no one to tackle the running back. Someone's got to get off a block, and I think that's what you saw there. So schematically, they're put in a tough spot because of some of the stuff they had to do in the back end.
So you expect this to be replicated?
The Giants' game plan?
The Bengals have a different quarterback and a different receiver group, so I have a hard time buying that they're replicating that.
So if I'm the Bengals, I look at this and say, like, this is an effective solution, and we don't want them to be in cover 2 shell. So one way to get them out of cover 2 shell is to run the heck out of the ball. I don't know if they're physically capable of doing that with the personnel. Like, if you look at how the Giants constructed their O-line, it's a little bit of like a meat grinder kind of deal there. Like, they want to do that. Bengals, they want to throw the ball a lot. So if I'm Joe Witt Jr., I'm like...
The Giants keep getting hit on their offensive line and the lack of production through the years. They've actually spent a lot of money and a lot of assets on it in recent years. Oddly, Evan Neal's not part of that seemingly any longer. He must have fallen off of...
Bad.
But Andrew Thomas has turned out to be a very good left tackle. John Michael Schwartz was a very high draft pick. They just spent money on Illuminor and Runyon.
Right tackle,
yeah. So they're fixing that. Yeah. And to your point, they looked at Washington's strength and went right at it.
Yeah, and again, you can maximize those guys inside through movement, stunts, pressures. But if we can't cover it up on the back end, like, I don't want to call that because that leads to explosive plays in the offense. So I understand that there's a bit of frustration there, but I think when you look at the flow of the game, it needed to happen. It needed to happen to slow them down and get us the win. And ultimately, like, I think John and Duran would say the same thing. Like, the priority isn't me having 10 tackles. It's me winning the football game.
That's right. Week 1, they actually won a lot at the point of attack.
Yes.
They just didn't get the sacks.
Right.
Didn't finish the plays. This week against Daniel Jones, and we were talking about it in the booth, you have to disrupt him because he doesn't see the field very well. He throws the ball into dangerous places. He will turn the ball over. I saw him against Minnesota a couple times slide into where the pressure was coming from. Like, he gets rattled, for lack of a better term. They didn't rattle him yesterday. So getting some, because I can't believe this was true, but I cited this in the pregame yesterday. You know, he has the best quarterback rating of any Giants quarterback ever. Now, nobody would ever think that about him.
What?
But he does. Yes. He has
ever?
Yes. Of any Giants quarterback ever. Better.
Eli Manning?
Yes.
Really?
He has a better quarterback rating at this point. Nobody thinks of him that way because he hasn't won very much, but he does. You need to move him. if he stands in the pocket, he's actually very effective and very accurate, and he can run the ball. We saw that yesterday. I was worried he couldn't really. Well, not worried.
This is a tangent. What's his quarterback rating? Do you remember?
I don't remember. It ain't great, but it's shocking. Like when you think of Eli Manning, you're like, what are you talking about? But if you actually think about Eli Manning, and the complaint about him always was, always the you were in the sports radio world. I was. Is he elite? That went on for years.
Yeah.
He'd win. They'd go to Super Bowls, and then people would ask, is he elite? Because his stats are kind of like, during the course of the season.
Right.
Anyway, like they did not pressure. They didn't finish against Baker. Couldn't get him down. Probably would have had 5 sacks otherwise.
Right.
And then with Daniel Jones, I don't think they got enough consistent pressure on him, didn't move him around. So what do you make of just kind of in general the pass rush?
I think it goes back to that same thing we were just talking about. Like schematically, like you're going to have a hard time. Like they know what he is, and they're going to – that's what I'm saying. This is an NFL team. They're going to game plan at an NFL level. Like they look at what they saw last week. They're going to have a plan for that. And so I think that's what they did. And I think there's going to be – so, for example, let's just take Cincinnati that's coming up here, right? If they're going to be like, we're going to throw the ball a bunch, if I'm Joe Witt Jr., I'm like, we're going to find ways to bring line stunts, to loop guys around. We know what you're doing. You watch how Dallas plays teams that throw the ball a lot, i.e. the Commanders last year. Like, they're able to create a ton of pressure with 4 because it's a passing down every single time. And I'm very confident that Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, Darryl Tapp will find a way to maximize that. Because again, when you look at individual win percentages here, they're not going to be super high. But when you look at the group, I think you can cultivate a group that can be maximized here. And I think Frankie Luvu rushing the passer is also going to be pretty dynamic.
Yeah, one of the things on we saw seesaw was missed tackles, which was clearly a big part of week 1. A little bit yesterday. I agree with you on Luvu.
Yeah.
Like his energy, his ability to be around the ball, he's a disruptive player.
He's so disruptive, and I don't know how he plays this way all the time, but like the physicality, like the physicality that he plays with, like again, there's missed tackles, every week. And again, that's got to be corrected. I'm not saying that. But having a piece like Luvu is incredible. Like the way he fits on guards, I've never seen a linebacker just snap the offensive line head. Like he almost knocked Malik Neighbors out of the game in a pursuit tackle, like chasing him from behind. Like he is a physical, explosive, violent guy who plays with a great motor. And I think that's a piece, right? And as you build around those pieces, I think you're just going to, again, this is a work in progress, right? But having that core piece, a really talented piece in the middle of the defense, I think is pretty fantastic.
It was interesting. Like in the spring and the summer after they had signed him, I called some of my colleagues down in Carolina, and I'm like, just tell me about him. And all of them were like, we don't know why he's not here. They were like, he was like, we don't know why they wouldn't have brought him back.
Right.
Like we don't get it. Like he was one of those. They would give me the reasoning behind Jeremy Chin. Oh, he had these injuries or whatever they would say. But with Luvu, all of them were like, we don't know what it was they didn't like.
Right.
That led him to leaving. They didn't understand it.
I will say, when you watch this film, I don't understand why they leave. Like, obviously, so what do we got? Oh, we
after the game. So Bram was right.
So before...
It dropped after the game. But he is still ahead of Eli Manning. Yeah. Do you know who Y.A. Tittle is?
No, I don't.
He's a Hall of Famer, but that's not important right now. Jones pre-game had the best Giants quarterback rating ever coming into the game and just fell by 0.2 points behind the great Y.A. Tittle. And my father is looking down on me today, so proud that I know who Y.A. Tittle is.
So what else we got? We got missed tackles, paint. Oh, we got third down and long conversions.
Third and long conversions.
Yeah, I understand that
for the Giants.
Yes, I understand that is a big criticism. I understand why. And again, I understand the frustration because those are downs, much like the red zone where you got to get off the field, you got to win situational football. I will say there was a couple of those where I thought the Giants they're an NFL team. They had a really good plan for man coverage on third down because Joe Witt Jr. has kind of shown, I want to bring pressure on third down and be really aggressive. Like bringing Frankie Luvu, blitzing Bobby Wagner. They did a good job blitzing Mike Sanderson on a couple of those. I get it. But the thing I would point out is that they did adjust in the second half. They'd made changes to alleviate some of the pressure on those quarters in man-to-man situations. And again, it's a little disappointing until they figure out the corner situation because you're never that they're always going to, obviously Forbes is hurt. some other guys had to step in, but like you're never going to maximize the rush until the secondary is figured out. And Joe Wick Jr. can be who he wants to be, and I get that that's frustrating. But I do like that Joe Wick Jr. said, my ego is not the most important thing. Winning the game is the most important thing. I love the kind of we're always trying to get better. We're always trying to maximize, and it might not be exactly what we thought it would be at the beginning, but it ends up having a positive result.
I don't know if you feel the same way. I mean, every time I see, especially our rivals draft somebody that high, you wonder how good are they, and on first glimpse, Malik Neighbors is going to be a problem. Like, he's going to be a problem for everybody. He reminds me of...
saw that, too. I mean, didn't Dan Quinn after the presser? I mean, everyone saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. He reminds me, we're going to get Jamar Chase this week. He reminds me of him.
That was my comp for him coming out.
He looks like Jamar Chase.
Yeah, they're very, very
where he
similar.
catches the ball, the acceleration after the catch is just dramatic.
It is dramatic. He's got strong hands. And again, he's, like you said, he's still a young player, but Cincinnati Bengals are going to be a very interesting matchup for the Washington Commanders.
They are. All right, let's do one quick one. We saw, seesaw on Jayden Daniels. Again, took a hit. Got the wind knocked out of him. Lost his helmet a couple times in the first week. Everyone's screaming about sliding, protecting yourself. You saw
I saw a competitive son of a gun is what I saw. So, again, in the first game, I don't think he took any shots that were too dramatic. I mean, the helmet fell off, right? He's trying to score a touchdown. I think what I appreciate about him is he's being extremely selective about when to take the shot. So in this game, when he gets the wind knocked out of him, obviously we were worried up in the booth. But he actually, I think you can see his head. He looks where the first down marker is and says, I'm short. I got to get it. And he makes that second effort and gets the first down. And again, you don't want him to get hurt, but if you're going to do it, let's do it on a third and down that you can get, and we can get, and think about it. If he gets that one, and let's say they go 3 and out the next play, that flips the field position. And for a team when you're playing a team like the Giants, those extra 15 yards of field position are extremely impactful on the result of the game. So again, I've been very actually impressed with how he's handled himself in that regard. Because again, he could be going totally crazy, and just a guy Jason over there, and I watched all of his college film and saw him take some huge hits. I'm sure you did as well.
They were cartoonish at times. Yeah.
But I think you're seeing him do it more selectively now, which to me shows a maturity. And we talked about his poise, all those positive things. He's doing it in what I would characterize as the right moments. Again, it's like, if you're going to do it, let's do it for a touchdown in a critical moment of the game.
There was a statement that Dan Quinn made in the middle of camp at one point where they've been harping on, him protecting himself. And I think some of this is just, we see what we have in him, and we want him to have a nice long career, and I think it was him and Adam Peters who both kind of intimated, they go, we're not just trying to make him a good quarterback right now. We're trying to have him have a long, successful career. And you can kind of feel that in the way that they've kind of, sheltered him from all the media attention that would come with being the number 2 overall pick and a Heisman Trophy winner, and in a place that's starving for a franchise quarterback and waiting for this turnaround. And they could have put him up on the pedestal and said, here he is, our savior showed up. And they never did anything like that. At the same time, all they've been doing this summer, harping. Get down, protect yourself. And then there's this part of me that goes, let him be himself. His instincts are great. Let him play the game. And at the same time, I also think they want to protect him from himself at times too. And so there's a balance here as we figure this thing out.
Yeah, because if you rein him in too much, obviously you lose what makes him effective, which is
makes him special.
Yeah, special is the word. Thank you. That's a much better word. So you lose what makes him special. So for me, again, the helmet coming off, I don't think any of those were too dramatic. It's the ability to decide. Again, and as a quarterback throwing the football, you're making the same decisions. Think about Joe Burrow. He says this all the time. I'm going to be extra aggressive. I'm okay taking a sack on third down, taking a big hit on third down, because it's the money down, and that's where I got to be excellent. And so to me, it's the same mindset. He's just doing it while he's running for a first down.
All right, we got another segment for you.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I love segments.
I would like to get nerdy with Professor Paulson.
Oh, God.
Okay, so let's see. Week 1, no intermediate passing game.
Yeah.
Jayden was maybe a little sped up. Felt a little different in week 2. In week 2, not unlike week 1, Terry McLaurin saw double the amount of targets and was actually the most targeted receiver. But you know what the numbers are, 4 for 22, something like that. Second game in a row where he didn't even cross 30 yards receiving. What do you do if you're Cliff Kingsbury, Jayden Daniels, et cetera, to try to unlock their number 1 receiver?
So I will say this. I do think that Cliff tried to tried a couple times to kind of take a shot with Terry down the field, and kudos to New York. They did a good job matching it. I already talked about that post where Zach's running the sit and Terry's over top. Like, oh my gosh, that could have been a huge explosive play, but they played it right. So that happens sometimes. There's a blaze out corner, so like they're running heavy play action. They got a bunch of tight ends in the game, and he runs like an inside release corner to the pylon, and they play it correctly. Like, you're hoping that they lose him on the pylon and he hits it, but they hit him correctly. So I do, and again, Tampa Bay, there was a couple. The deep shot on the sideline, which everyone remembers. There was a deep shot up the seam, which Jayden didn't let the ball go on. And again, Jayden has since come out and said, like, oh, it was because, like, pre-snap, I thought it was going to be dead. Obviously, like, as he grows, that's going to be better. So I think there have been opportunities in this game. Giants did a good job matching him. Terry's one of our better players on offense. Like, you don't want him behind the defense, so you're going to prioritize covering him. Week 1, I thought it was Jayden's inexperience that led to a lack of production. I think this will.
And one near miss on the first play of the second half could have been a touchdown.
Yeah, and so I think that type of that development of the offense is going to naturally come. Like next week, Cincinnati might not cover Terry on the post, and it's a 80-yard bomb for a touchdown. And the one thing about Cliff, when you watch him in 2012, he's very selective about explosive play opportunities. So like 5 to 6 times in a game, he'll take that shot. And it's going to look a little bit different each week. And it's going to be to a different guy, usually a receiver, but they're going to be behind the defense. You're like, how'd that guy get there? And I think as the offense develops, as it grows, as we get more familiar with the spacing of the offense, these receiver touches will come naturally. Because the stuff you look at to Zach, it's Zach winning one-on-one with the linebacker, Zach winning one-on-one with the safety, and that's a matchup favorable to Zach. These receiver targets, I think, are going to come more through scheme as we go, but you have seen flashes of that already. We just haven't connected, and I think that's why fans are like, why are the receivers involved? They just haven't hit yet, but when they do hit, they're going to be explosive.
Well, I mean, this is a larger question. Do they have explosive playmakers on the edge? And if it isn't Terry making that big play, who would it be? And that's an open question, I think.
I mean, I definitely think Terry has that ability. We've seen him do that over the course of his career. And I think, again, Noah Brown showed kind of why it was a nice addition in the game. The explosiveness with which he attacked the football was great. I think OZ, we saw on the punt return in the game, he can be special after the catch. He's got a nice physicality.
Diami's had these moments in the past.
I was going to say, so when you look at those, again, there's no maybe true 2 there. There's no true 2. Like Terry's obviously the one. There's no true 2, but they all are explosive players. And I think that's the thing I'm encouraged about is when you look at Cliff, again, in 2021, there was D-Hop, but he was able to find explosive plays to, Christian Kirk before Christian Kirk became the guy in Jacksonville. And there are a couple other guys who were maybe not as big of names, but they had that explosive vertical speed. So I'm very confident that as Jayden matures, these opportunities, because even there was a dig throw to Terry where Jayden's a little late, and it's like, it ends up being kind of a contested catch, ball pops out, right? Yeah. If he's on time, like Terry might catch that and turn up the field. Who knows, right? Those are the things that come with a young quarterback and timing. And again, we talked about how well Jayden's done, but I still think there's a lot of room to grow to get into that top 15, top 20 kind of range of quarterback, because that's what you see those guys doing all the time.
I assume you haven't seen much of the Bengals yet. I watched, when I got home, I watched the end and I saw them lose at the buzzer to the Chiefs. Everybody does in Arrowhead. That's not that big of a deal, right? I was a touch surprised by their opener, scoring 10 points and losing to New England at home. So they're 0-2 on Monday night. It's going to be a heavy focus on them all week. It's a big game for them.
Yeah, huge game.
It's a huge game for them. And I know what kind of aspirations they have, what's going to be said about them. It's the only game. If you're Dan Quinn and company, what are you talking about this week? Because obviously they're going to be an extraordinarily motivated group on Monday night, 0-2 at home.
Yeah. I think the one thing is defensively, they don't have like any elite personnel necessarily. They have that defensive end. His name escapes me at the moment. Hendrickson, thank you. Yes. Yep. But outside of that, there's not. They've unfortunately, because of all the money they've invested in the offense, have had to kind of let those guys go, right?
I agree.
Jesse Bates is out in Atlanta now doing his thing. So I think the offense here can be very productive. The Commanders' offense potentially. I think defensively you're gonna have a tough sled, right? But I think that's the great thing about football. It's not offense versus defense. It's how our combined team plays against your combined team. So if we can possess the football the way we did against the Giants, keep the defense off the field, play a field position game, put them in advantageous situations, and then Joe Witt Jr. can come up with a wrinkle. I'm not saying they can't win this game, because I do think there's a path. It's a slight margin, but I think the lack of defensive elite talent on defense for the Bengals gives us a window, especially with how efficient our offense has been. Between the 20s, we just need to capitalize on some of those trips in the red zone.
Let me revisit. Neighbors was targeted 18 times, 10 catches. They had a hard time keeping in front of them. Assuming T. Higgins plays, now you got Chase and Higgins and Burrow, who's an extraordinary quarterback. If you're Joe Witt, what are you thinking about with the secondary this week?
So if I'm thinking, hey, man, let's make them go on 18-play drives. Like, I know Joe Burrow is a special player, and he's very patient, and he's probably the closest thing to Tom Brady, in terms of how he handles himself in the pocket. But I'm going to make him be patient. Make him be patient. Keep everything in front. Let's not mess around, because one of the things – so obviously the Cincinnati offense was semi-effective before Jamar Chase came. It became a top 5 offense because of the explosive plays Jamar Chase brings. So don't let Jamar Chase behind you. Keep everything in front. It's going to be a frustrating game for fans, I would think, because it's going to be a bunch of hitches and outs, and we're going to rally to tackle, and they're going to go on long, long drives. But if they make a mistake, penalty, false start, incomplete pass, that's where you have to capitalize on those second and long, third and long situations. And it's, again, small margin, but that's how I would approach this. Again, just try to limit the explosive plays from that offense.
And if B-Rob's got another 17 to 20 carry game, let's do that.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. Like we talked about it with the ball control. Can you manage and control the football, keep your defense fresh, put a little pressure on that offense to be more aggressive? Let's say you go out and score first. They got to be a little bit more aggressive. Does it get them out of their game plan? Does Joe Burrow change his mindset? Those are all things that are important. Game flow will be very, very important in this game.
So we are officially on to Cincinnati, as Bill Belichick would say. We're on to Cincinnati. For Logan, I'm Bram. We'll see you next week for the next booth review.